watching Hockey North, 99% of the time we are all women's hockey all the time. The PWHL is our bread and butter, but we don't live in a vacuum. There's something real special going on in Four Nations, especially with Milan Cortina. Less than a year away, NHLers are back for the Olympics. I'm not a politician, Karissa. I'm not a political journalist. But I also feel like this tournament is becoming so much more than just sport. It's going to be remembered in people's hearts and minds for a very long time because of how the world is unfolding. So give me a preview. I know it's going to be charged, but Canada-USA, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, this is the men's hockey game of the year, right? Like, all apologies to the Stanley Cup. I think for North Americans, this is the one that they're going to want to watch. And I'm expecting, Anastasia, we're going to see fewer shenanigans off the hop like we saw on Saturday. This game is for all the marbles. It's worth too much. You're not going to be out there taking, penalties that you don't need. Like, it's just going to be about the hockey. And that part is really exciting because I think it's the best hockey that we've seen. Like, these are the best players in the world, like McDavid, Crosby, Matthews, Eichel, all playing on one stage. It's awesome. And I think, we think about that loss on Saturday and it takes me back to the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Like, nobody is going to remember who won the round robin. The only thing that people care about is who won the championship. And when you think of the 2010 Olympics, you think of Jerome McGinley to Sid, right? Nobody's thinking of what happened before that. So it's a huge opportunity for Canada. And on the ice, I mean, the U.S. has had some injuries, huge loss in Charlie McAvoy because he was out there setting the scene, I think, and sending a message to the Canadians with some of his physicality in that game on Saturday. I think about that hit on McDavid early in the game. So they're going to be without him. And then Canada's going to have Cale Makar in the fold, who they didn't have on Saturday. And we all know how important he is to this team. So I think the Canadians have a fresh slate. It's theirs for the taking.
And everyone knows exactly where they were when Sid scored that goal. Okay, a big question, of course, in tournament play is chemistry. Canada has found something in its lineup and lines. What are you liking to see?
Yeah, I thought after the Finland game, the lines just feel a little bit more balanced. I think about that third line. You've got Mitch Marner, Anthony Cirelli, and Brandon Hagel. That's a line that can do a lot at both ends of the ice. And there's some chemistry there, too, in terms of, the two Tampa Bay Lightning teammates, and then also Mitch Marner playing with Anthony Cirelli, who I believe he grew up with and played some of his youth hockey with. And then we saw Braden Point moved up to the first line. We saw him creating a little bit of magic with Connor McDavid. And we haven't even talked about the second line yet, Anastasia, which is my personal favorite line, trying not to show my maritime bias here, but you've got the Nova Scotia connection, obviously, with Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, and then you've got Sam Reinhart as well. And that was the best line in the game against Finland, and I think Canada's best game all tournament. So if they can bring that back again against the U.S., I think they've got a good shot.
You mentioned McDavid. I think there's a lot of conversation around, is this kind of that proverbial passing of the torch from Sid the Kid to McDavid? What's your take?
Yeah, it's funny to say that because the guy's been playing for years, right? We just haven't seen him on this particular stage because we haven't had men's hockey international best on best for 8 years, sadly. But I think when we look ahead to 2026, like, as long as Sid is playing, he's the captain. He's their spiritual leader. He's the guy, right? And that's not to take away from McDavid and what he brings. Obviously, he's a part of their leadership group this time around. And he's, I would expect probably going to be their captain in 2030, assuming that Sid has hung him up by then, which, of course, we never know. I never bet against Sidney Crosby. But in, 2026, like, Sid's the captain. He's the leader of this team in every way imaginable. And also, he has been fantastic in this tournament, too. Like, the guy came in not at 100%, right? And you weren't expecting necessarily that he was going to be Sidney Crosby from 2010 or 2014. And I think he's exceeded expectations.
Immediately, I was texting everyone, there's nothing better than international hockey, immediately. There is a big game, of course, Canada-USA tonight, but at present, what's the biggest lesson that you think Team Canada will take into Milan Cortina?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think for the public, Anastasia, just what you said. I mean, we talk about women's hockey a lot here, so we know how great this rivalry between Canada and the U.S. is. We know how great best on best international hockey is. We've been seeing that a lot in women's hockey. So that's not new to us, but we haven't seen it, sadly, in the men's hockey world with NHLers in particular for 8 years. And so this is just a reminder of how great the sport can be and what we were missing all those years. Like, thank goodness for all the folks who thought this was going to be a glorified all-star game. Like, no way. These guys have been salivating to wear their country's colors, and they finally got to do it, right? And it's better, I think, than anybody could have ever imagined. So, I mean, first of all, we know going into 2026, longer tournament, we're going to get to see a bit more hockey. Like, that's going to be amazing. I think it was Gary Bettman who called this an appetizer for the Olympics. So, like, I'm ready for the full meal. Okay, like, I got my reservation. I'm ready to watch it. That's awesome. For Team Canada in particular, I think a lot depends on what happens tonight. I think about in net, if Jordan Binnington, doesn't play well and they lose, then maybe you look at 2026 and you ask, like, is he the guy? And the problem with that, Anastasia, is, we didn't see any other goaltenders from Canada playing games. Obviously, it's a short tournament. I understand why that was, but if he's not the guy, who is? I don't think we know the answer to that question. That's going to be a big question to answer if things don't go well tonight for Team Canada.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you think's going to win? What's your goal prediction?
You know what? I've gone back and forth on this. I'm going to say 3-2 overtime. Probably going to be a tight game. I think maybe just coming from women's hockey world, like, best rivalry in the world, you got to go to overtime, get the bonus hockey, have the big overtime moment. And I'm going to say Canada. Like, to be honest, Anastasia, my brain says, that maybe the United States is the better team. I think certainly they've got the better goaltender. And, they obviously have some stars up front. But my heart says Canada. I mean, that line that we talked about earlier with the Nova Scotia connection, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Sam Reinhart, you got 5 Stanley Cups on that line. That's more than the entire American roster has. So these are guys who know how to show up in a big moment. They know how to perform in a big stage. I'm going Canada. What about you?
I'm going Canada. I have it at 2-1, but yeah, everything that you've said, my heart is telling me the red and white, and my heart is telling me the red and white in less than a year's time, too. But so exciting to have international men's hockey back at this level, and we're going to be in for a great game. Okay, we just talked a lot about men's hockey. It's going to be a great game. Still lots of PWHL action, though. Really cool moment between the Montreal Victoire and the New York Sirens from last Saturday. Emmy Fecteau, she takes the face-off against Marie-Philippe Poulin, both, of course, wearing number 29. And then Pooh goes so hard on her. I mean, I just love the physicality, Karissa. It was just such a cool moment. I can't imagine that this isn't a true highlight for Fecteau.
Yeah, that's pretty neat for her. We know she likes the rough stuff. She she likes being able to hit. She said that. But what a cool moment for her. Obviously Marie-Philippe Poulin was her idol growing up. They're from the same part of Quebec, and just to get to have that moment in front of her. I also think you must have a little bit of extra juice playing in front of your home crowd and playing in front of the team that didn't draft you. Like, a lot of people thought that Montreal was going to draft her last year, and of course they didn't. And so it's a bit of a message like, hey, should have picked me.
I love that. She buries Pooh into the net. And Fecteau, of course, comes from the Concordia Stingers. So cool that she got coached by Julie Chu and Carolyn Ouellette and now is facing off against her hero. Karissa, you're the best. Our next PWHL game, of course, February 22nd, that's getting set at 2 p.m. Eastern. The Montreal Victoire are going to the Ottawa Charge. It's a big-time Canadian battle.